Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Just Business Podcast. I just wanted to come on and make a real quick PSA about this episode. While I was editing it, I discovered that some of the audio files got corrupted from our microphones. So I know throughout the episode it's going to sound a little bit weird and not as crisp as it usually does. So I do apologize for that. Please bear with me. We'll have it all figured out for the next episode. Thanks for listening. I'm sorry about the audio in this episode, but I hope you guys are able to still, bear with it and enjoy this show. Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess to start, why don't you just give everybody like the quick 60-second pitch? Who is Rocky Santo and what do you do?
So Rocky Santo, and thanks for having me today, Jake. I really am excited. Rocky Santo is a aspiring entrepreneur, owner of Lenscape Media, which is a video production company located in the Hudson Valley that serves local small businesses and nonprofits in the community. And I don't know if that was 60 seconds, but I would say that that's a good...
Yeah, honestly, the brief is good. I mean, having, you want your quick elevator pitch, and then obviously we'll get into all the details, I'm sure, throughout the rest of the episode.
Perfect.
But yeah, so Lenscape Media, obviously you do videography and video production, right, for all of these different other companies and organizations, like you mentioned. So like what is the backstory behind Lenscape Media? What kind of inspired you to start the business and get into like the realm of videography?
Yeah. So there's really two aspects to it, right? There's the business side of things, and then there's the actual art side of things, is how I usually refer to it. I'm naturally an artist. And so when I was probably 14 or 15, I came across this medium of video.
Mm-hmm.
And I started working with video just on my own projects. And I'm a hiker and avid outdoors person. So I started my YouTube channel where I would record hikes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so
I always thought about that because I also like to hike, and I was like walking through the woods one day, and I was thinking about all of those like ASMR videos. I'm not really a fan of those per se, but I thought it would be interesting, like really relaxing to have like just like kind of point of view hiking videos where you have like some nice sound of like the leaves crunching and stuff. I feel like people would be into that. Was that what it was, or was it something different?
It's like a combination of things, right? Because I think just being out in the wilderness kind of there's kind of two senses it gives you. One is adventure, like an action, and then the other is just beauty of like the outdoors. And so I think both parts of that are something that I really enjoy, and I try to capture both of those.
Okay. Is that still something you do? Like you make like hiking related YouTube videos? Yeah. What's that channel called?
It's called Rocky Wilderness.
Rocky Wilderness. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out because like I said, I love to hike too. I go all over upstate New York into New Jersey. They actually have a bunch of really cool trails in New Jersey. I think it's called Harriman State Park. But I won't get too off track there in terms of all that stuff. But
I could talk about hiking all day.
Yeah. But I guess like bringing it back to what you're talking about, like your inspiration and everything. I thought it was interesting that you mentioned how it's like kind of a little bit of both, right? It's art in the form of like obviously audio visual, recording and showing all of that is an art form in itself. And then you have the business element of it in terms of like, turning it into something you can make money off of. And that's actually been like a common theme amongst most of the people that I've talked to and interviewed so far on the show. Obviously I've had tattoo artists, I have graphic designers who, just do like physical media in terms of like drawing and painting stuff. And they all kind of say the same thing because I think it's true. Like, you can have an art form and then also turn that into like a business element too. So it was kind of interesting to hear you talk about like the link between those two things.
Yeah.
But I guess going back to like the backstory, so you said obviously it started with the hiking. Where did it go from there? How did it turn into doing more so like business related reporting and things like that?
Yeah. So me personally, I think a lot of artists can relate. I'm kind of a jack of all trades.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if you're the same way, but in growing up and going through high school, I just started trying different things to do for a career. And I think that that's a question that everyone has, like at that age, what am I going to do for the rest of my life?
Yeah.
And I didn't have an answer to that. And when I graduated high school, it's about 2 years ago now, like you're told what to do throughout high school, throughout your whole life until they hand you the diploma. And then they say, now you decide.
Yeah.
And for someone like me who doesn't like making choices, like don't put a diner menu in front of me.
Yeah, too many options.
Right.
Yeah.
That was a very difficult question to answer.
Okay.
And so I started working construction with my dad. I worked all through high school I worked for a landscaper for my dad doing construction. And at one point he just said to me like, hey Rocky, you should learn business. And I've always been interested in it because I just always, I guess, not knowing what career path I would specifically take, I've always known that I wanted to do something where I could own my own business, right?
Yeah.
And so I decided to start learning business, and it's kind of a whole story how that all happened. We can talk more about that if you want, but long story short, I decided to start this business as a way of learning business skills.
Okay. Yeah, like a kind of like a test, right? To kind of just dip your toes in the water. That makes a lot of sense.
Like a test, but also I think that business has a specific skill set that's universal to every industry.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would also add it is one of like the few things, maybe not the few things, but it is one of those things where it's kind of like you can read as much about it as you want, but you're really not going to get the skill set or the knowledge about it until you actually go out and try and go ahead and do it, make an attempt, whether it's starting your own business or working in a small business to kind of get those skills. Like it's not something you pick up out of a book like you can in some other things.
I think I heard you mention you go to classes part-time out of school.
I graduated last year from Baruch College with a business degree.
Nice.
And that was, I think I might have talked about that in my personal podcast when I was just doing the solo episode. But yeah, I think I mentioned it there too. It's kind of like, I went to business school, but it was also just something that I was kind of doing to like appease my mom, because she was like, you need to get into college, you got to get a degree. And I was like, I don't like, I was good in school. I showed up, I did all the work, I, got good grades and all of that, but it was never something that I was like super passionate about.
Right.
So having to like do another 4 years of school for like a degree that I didn't really need, I was not too enthusiastic about. But yeah, so I did end up doing it. I graduated, I got a diploma. But bringing it back to what we were saying, I think like, the stuff that I learned in school, while, some of it may be applicable, you really don't, it doesn't compare it to like just getting out there, especially like just me with my business, being out there, working with customers, communicating with clients, communicating with distributors, and actually learning about the business firsthand. It doesn't compare.
Yeah. And I just went to Dutch Community College, which is a school up here part-time for the first time this semester. And I can second what you're saying. Like you get out what you put in, I think. Right. And so you can learn a ton in college, and like, it wasn't a waste of time.
Yeah.
But when I'm comparing that education to the education that I get through doing it and through having these mentors to reach out to, it really makes me second guess going back to college.
Yeah.
I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. I think that's like a universal experience. Obviously, there's going to be people out there who disagree, and that's totally fine. Some people do work well in like an educational system or an academic setting, and that's, good for that person. That's totally fine too. But I think in the large majority, we have seen like a shift, especially in recent years with like the price of tuition going up and stuff. A lot of younger people and even some people who've been through school are starting to realize like the value that you're getting for the money that you're putting in many cases is not equivalent. You're usually, especially if you're going to a bigger name school or a private university, you'll be spending tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, for a degree that you could probably get if you just kind of like sat down and Googled long enough and found enough articles. You could probably learn the same thing.
Right.
And I think, that's part of the reason why we also see a lot of young entrepreneurs like yourself and myself too. I forgot to mention this at the beginning. You're only 19, right?
Right.
Right. So, I mean, I'm not much older than you either. I'm 22. But we're starting to see this. I feel like we're starting to see this trend where there's a lot more young entrepreneurs getting into it earlier and earlier because there's more accessibility via the internet to like learn skills and turn it into a business. And like I mentioned with the school thing, it's like instead of going to school, why wouldn't you just start your own business and kind of learn from that? So going back to what you're saying, where you started this business in terms of trying to get a better understanding of everything and do all of that. So it is interesting to like tie that all together.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you started with the YouTube channel. You started to progress. Your dad said that you wanted to get into business, and you said that's a little bit of a longer story. So let's talk about it. So what exactly happened there, and why? What are some of the finer details, if you don't mind sharing, so that people can get a better understanding?
Yeah. Mentors. Okay.
Okay.
So this kind of story about mentors and how they affected my life, because I was working just side jobs for someone who's very successful in business. He's in his 80s, and I kind of expressed a little bit of interest in business before my dad asked me this question, but I decided to call him up and I asked him, "Hey, can you stop paying me and start teaching me business?"
Okay.
And like something just, if you're younger than me, you might not know this yet. If you're older than me, you definitely know this, that people, and I'm sure your experiences like this, that people like really love to help.
Yeah.
And like not everyone obviously, but it's like just asking someone to mentor you is like uncomfortable, but two things. One is they'll probably be happy to help, and two, it will change your life. And I can say that about this. And so what my mentor did when he said, "Yes, sure, I'd absolutely love to do that," is he wanted me to start a farmer's market business. And so Lenscape Media is actually my second business.
Okay.
I had this business called Empower Bites, where I created, do you know what an energy bite is? Like an energy ball. There's different names for it.
Yeah, like I don't know any specific brands, but I do know a lot of, I used to do Spartan races and stuff like that. Like a lot of people would carry those like in their bag throughout the race with like protein and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So I kind of developed that product and whatnot, and it never really went anywhere. And a couple reasons for that. One is I was working part-time and I wasn't putting in the work necessary to make it go somewhere.
Okay.
Two was New York State has a lot of legal regulations, especially in regards to a food product that isn't going into an oven and that you're just forming into a product. And so I think it was like September when I was finally almost to the point where I could start selling them. And farmers market season was coming to a close. And so I thought, maybe I'm going to start a different business.
Okay. So it was kind of like also a timing issue too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say so. But then again, like I thought it was a great product and that it could go somewhere. So I think one thing just about me that I naturally have and that I've learned, I think, to overcome. And this is the story of how this business got its start. I like to put like the specific date, October 29th of 2022, as like the day when Lenscape Media, my business, now started.
Okay.
And the reason is I would be so hesitant in my taking steps forward through this Empower Bites business, right? The whole summer, and I had some excuses. I didn't know if the product would work and whatnot. But I began to, when fall came around, my primary mentor, who I mentioned before, kept getting on me. Like, why are you so hesitant?
Right.
And we had many conversations like this. And then I remember this one day on October 29th, I was over there and he was challenging me, like, just go for it. Yeah. I would come up with an idea, like, I don't know, I was brainstorming. I had some different business ideas. The video business was one of them at the time. And he said, like, just do it. And I remember saying to him, but I like to know that it's going to work out before I just jump all in.
Nope.
And that's exactly what he said.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
Yeah, it's not how it works.
And
go ahead. Sorry.
oh, well, I left there and I was still like kind of perplexed and just uncertain leaving there. But I turned on a podcast that I've been listening to, and I'm a very faith-based person, and that's like, I'm sure it'll come up in this conversation just because that's like the foundation of my life.
Sure.
But I turn on this podcast, and the guy who's being interviewed literally says, like, sometimes in life there's more than one right choice, and you won't know before you go, essentially. And I think I just kind of had that moment of realization, like right now in my life, I'm called to choose.
Yeah.
And it's not a matter of choosing the right choice, but it's a matter of just going for it. And that success depends more on the power of your step than it does the direction of your step. And so it was kind of that day where I just decided, like, I'm just going to go for it. And it's been it's not like it's one and done. Like, I have to still fight against that, I think, hesitancy, doubt. I'm really glad you used that word, because like this is something that I've really been thinking of.
That's, I think that's, you're not alone in that experience, because a lot of entrepreneurs are in the same boat, right? Like, because like your mentor said to you, you don't know if it's going to work out. You can have the most genius business idea of all time, and it's like, it's a surefire plan and the product's great, everybody loves it, but then as with anything, it's unpredictable, right? Like, you don't know what could happen. Even with the best idea, sometimes businesses fail because it wasn't executed on properly, or like you said, some people don't take action soon enough. And that's a really good point. I think a lot of people, that's important for people to hear too. It's something, it applies to business, but it really applies to like anything in life. Like people get so caught up with what if I do this wrong? Or what if it doesn't work out the way I want it to? It's like, well, what if you never did it at all? And then now you're definitely going to fail because you never did it.
Or what if it does work?
Yeah, what if it does work? And then it will, but you won't know until you go ahead and actually take the step to try it and just do it, like your mentor Nike said. But yeah, but no, it is really true, and I think part of it was kind of funny when I reached out to my mom met us because she met you first. But when you reached out, you were like, you seemed very not hesitant to do it, but I wasn't getting like a total confidence vibe from the way that you responded to it. And it's totally understandable. And it's not just you, because I've reached out to plenty of other people who have told me. Just last week, I emailed this guy. He owns a very good business in White Plains, and he's much older than us. He's I don't know exactly how old he is, but he's a grown adult with a very successful business, and even he was like, I'm not sure if I'm that interesting to listen to, and I don't know if I have that much to add about business. But I think something that everybody should understand, whether you're a business owner or not, is that you do have something to add. You don't always need to give your opinion, but like there is a time where something that you have, either a lived experience or some sort of knowledge or skill or something, is useful. And if you can share that with people, regardless of your age, like that's going to be helpful for people.
Yeah.
So it is important.
And something I've been thinking about a lot, I just talked to a different mentor yesterday, and he really drove down that doubt aspect of like just lacking a confidence, right? And it's something that like I just need to fight against and overcome. But something I was thinking about last night is I think like we have what we need, and like there's always more knowledge to be had, right? But I think the process of improving is actually more of a removal process than it is an input process. And what I mean by that is I think that if we can actually remove the doubt and remove the fear and remove those things, then we actually have that I don't know how to explain this fully, but like
it's like a sculpture.
Right. Like, I guess my reason for not being confident, right, if I'm like just speaking, is because it feels like faking it, right?
Sure.
But I think like what I'm coming to understand is that it's not faking it unless you are doubting
Right.
or something, and then you have that doubt aspect to you. But if you can overcome that doubt, then what remains is something worth being confident in.
Yeah, and I think that again universal to everybody. I watch a lot of like comedians on podcasts and stuff. Very successful comedians. They sell out like theaters, thousands of people a night. They make millions of dollars a year doing comedy. And even on some of these podcasts, they still go like, I'll show up to some of these things and I feel like I don't belong here because, it's kind of that imposter syndrome that you were alluding to, where regardless of where you are, I think you will have that doubt. And you made a very good point there about removing it or trying to, I don't want to say suppress it, but like acknowledge it and acknowledge the fact that while you might have that doubt, it's not the case. It's not like totally real,
Yeah. Do you think like
thought?
I'm sorry. I was just thinking though, like you hear, I mean, to suppress it or to like avoid it, I think is like, and I know you said that that's probably not the best word, but I think to embrace it is like the best thing you can do. Like if you, and I actually want to ask you, what do you do? Because you run a business and you have this podcast, and you have all kinds of stuff, right? And I'm really inspired by your drive. It's something that I don't see a lot of like in our generation, but you have a confidence too. And so I want to ask you, like, what's your method of overcoming that doubt, or are you just a natural?
Well, no, I mean, I would be lying if I said like there weren't times where I 100% like doubted myself or wasn't sure if something was going to work. I mean, I think everybody experiences that. And if somebody says that they don't experience that, I think they might be lying to you. But I think it is a human emotion and it is a human experience to not always be 100% confident. But I think for me, I mean, if I really had to kind of like pick it apart a little bit, I think my confidence, for whatever that's worth, is a culmination of a couple different things. I would say I have experiences that I think a lot of people my age don't have because I went out and tried to do it. Like I worked, just like you went and found a mentor and like have somebody teaching you, you're getting that experience. I went and worked for a small business, 2 small businesses in the process of getting to where I am today, where I also was put in positions where I had to not act as the owner of the business, but I had to act in like a little bit more than your general like retail job position. Right. So I had to do things and make calls and learn how to like lead a group of people early on. So part of it is the experience of just like going out and doing it. Once you do something, it becomes exponentially easier the second time or the third time or the fourth time you do it. Every time you do it, you're just going to become like a little bit more confident because it becomes more normal to you. I think that's part of it. Like things that you've never tried, there's a little bit of a fear there because you don't know what to expect. And then once you kind of get an understanding, you understand what to expect. Like this podcast, for example, I'm sure anybody could go look back at the first episode and even, still, I'm not saying I'm great at this, but there's definitely been a shift from the first episode to where we are now in terms of the way I feel internally. Whether or not I present that or not, I don't know. But I can tell you, like the first episode, I was super nervous and I was like, am I going to be able to make this podcast run for an hour? Like, do I have an hour worth of questions? Am I going to speak clearly? Is the audio going to be good? Is the video going to be good? But every time I do an episode and it comes out all right, that's just another experience that I have and, adds to my confidence that I'm going to be able to replicate that in the future. So that's the first part. And then I would say for the second part, I'd probably, have to attribute a lot of it to my mom. I mean, I think, just the way I was raised, she raised me to be not arrogant or like overconfident in what you're doing, but to be confident that you can accomplish the task. You don't want to be you don't want to be arrogant, right? Because obviously nobody likes that. You don't want to pretend like, oh yeah, I have everything under control all the time. But if you can, she taught me like how to acknowledge emotions in the moment, deal with that, and I think that helps me too. When you're doing something and you can be present in the moment and not thinking about things that happened an hour ago or what's going to happen in 2 hours, like if you can just be present, you'll be able to handle your emotions a lot better. And I think that's, for me anyway, part of how I've learned to be a bit more confident when I'm doing anything, really.
Yeah, that's good. No, thank you.
Yeah. So I think that was part of it in terms of that. I guess I do want to talk about a little bit. You mentioned your mentors. Did you have any other influences about getting into business? Because, like, just for example, my mom owned her business, so I, obviously heavily influenced by that. I also liked watching Shark Tank as a kid, so that was cool. But how about you? Like, do you have any influences of your own?
Yeah, probably my dad would be the biggest one. I think it's evidenced by the fact that all kind of my siblings are entrepreneurial in how we think. At least I think so. I'm the only one who has my own business now, but my dad has his own small business, and he didn't do that for his entire career, but he always pushed us to work for ourselves, not for someone else. And I don't think there's anything bad about working for someone else. I think that's great. But there's also something to having that freedom, I guess, if that's the right word, or just ability to be more effective, I think, to make more of a difference. I think, so I think my dad,
yeah,
and I would say that my dad, and then my mentors, and then just trying to figure it out from a faith standpoint and a calling standpoint, like what am I called to do in my life?
Right. Yeah, well, I
think it's all kind of part of it.
Yeah, no, definitely. You mentioned like having that freedom and everything, and I 100% agree. Like that was my motivation going into it. I was, I'm not really the type to appreciate when other people tell me what to do. I think that's probably a common trait amongst many entrepreneurs.
Yep.
But it is true. I found that part of it appealing. And I think there's also, like you said, there's more autonomy in terms of how you control your life and the impact that you can make on other people. So that was interesting.
It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. It's more of an experience, right? Like, so I think especially now, we're young and we have the option to take risks now. So I think for many people, anybody who might be listening who is a little bit younger, or around the same age, like now's the time to take a risk too. That's the other thing. It's like if you have a family and you have to provide for like kids or a wife or whomever, then maybe you don't have that option to go out and take a risk. You are probably more likely to go and take a job where you're getting a steady paycheck and you're sure that your income is going to be the same every week. But yeah, it's like having the position that we're in now, and then obviously, you talked about how your father influenced you. So those are definitely factors that I would say are things that have enabled.
And I think I'm still trying to figure out where drive comes from, because I definitely see a lot of people who aren't driven. The concept of driven, just like wanting to go somewhere. And I know in my life, I think the first time that I realized like I wanted to go somewhere in life was when I was 3.
Okay.
And I just remember, it's funny because like I remember a couple moments from being 3, like 5 moments maybe. But one of them is just having the thought. I think my dad was talking to us about something, and I just remember having the thought like, if you only live once, like why doesn't everyone just give it their absolute best at life?
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably a majority, like a culmination of many, many different factors.
Right.
As I mentioned, some people aren't in a financial or situation to go out and take that risk or try to, go do more. Sometimes people get bogged down in the day to day of just like, I need to make my rent this month, so now I have to work this job, and this job drains me. So now I'm, gonna go home and just not think about anything because I spent all day like working and I don't have any brain power left. But then you are right, because I think it is also a choice. There's part of it that is a choice too, in terms of like, will you choose to be driven? Will you like put that within yourself to go out there and take steps that you don't necessarily need to take? And I think you can probably look at it two ways. You can look at the people who had maybe really good childhoods where they had like supportive parents who definitely motivated them to go out there and do their best and try and things. And then you could probably also look to the polar opposite, where you probably had people who were put in horrible situations, may have been neglected as children or something, and really forced to make it on their own, and that pushes them to progress. So I think it's different for everybody. I wouldn't say it's one specific thing that like drives people. People get driven by faith or money or greed. There's a whole bunch of different things that are positive and negative that drive people to do things.
And drive isn't necessarily positive in and of itself.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of different, like we're talking about drive in an entrepreneur context, but like drive can apply to if you work for somebody, like you don't just work for somebody, like you are still on a mission where you can do something effective with your life. Yeah. And I think that you can be driven in that context. Like you can be driven in your family context. It's kind of just, I think.
Yeah, what motivates people.
Yeah, and it's like living your best life.
Sure.
Like living to the brim. If you picture a cup,
yeah,
you could fill it 95%.
Yeah.
But it's not the same as if you fill it 100%.
Definitely. And I think you also look at it in terms of like motivations, that like people are driven in other ways too, because I know, there's certain people, you always hear like the example of like, when you're on your deathbed and you look back at your life, will you be satisfied with what it was? And I think, when you're talking about what drives people, that's really what you're talking about in the end. Like, are you going to have lived a full life? And that means many things to different people. For some people, like living a full life would mean starting a business and growing it to the absolute max and doing all of the, crazy different things within that business and making that successful. And then to other people, it could be something a lot simpler, like just having a family and having children. And then at the end of the day, just being fulfilled by that. So
yeah,
it's like I said, totally individualistic. And I think that's part of the reason why I have this podcast and I want to like share a ton of people's stories, because everybody has like a different motivation. You, for example, had mentioned like maybe your faith drives you to do different things, right? And that's a factor for you. And I've interviewed other people who totally don't believe in God and they still have motivations of their own. And it's not to say that one is better than the other or whatever, but it's interesting to get like those diverse perspectives and hear like the difference of thoughts and see how people think and how those thoughts relate to action for them.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. That's interesting.
That's like really the impetus of this whole show. Really, I wanted to like spread information to people and get everybody's message out there as best I can.
It's really cool. It's a cool idea.
Yeah. And part of that has been part of the show for me too, has also been like a networking element, and I wanted to get into that a little bit with you as well, because I know my mom said that she met you at a BNI meeting, was it?
Yes.
So are you in BNI, or were you like looking to join? Like, just
I'll probably be joining within the next week or two.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm glad you brought up this networking element.
Yeah, because I mean, it's obviously a massive part of business. You need to be able to network with people and grow, either a client base or just get word of mouth out there, get about your business so that you have customers coming in. So like, what kind of motivated you to go into BNI and start trying to network through that outlet?
I think it started for me with an emphasis on relationships. And this is something, again, that I would thank my mentor for, because like thinking about business, just growing up, you think about product, you think about selling, you think about money. What you don't think about, or maybe some people do, I didn't think about this as much at first, is the relationships aspect. And I think we think of relationships as a means to an end many times. Like the more connections you have, the more money you can make. But I would kind of flip that and say that relationships are the goal of business.
Okay.
And like it's great if you make money, but like we read all the time about people who make a ton of money and aren't satisfied, right? And it's great to achieve and to get to the peak of this mountain you've been climbing, right? Like the success. But even that, like there's something missing. And I think that when you look at relationships, and that can also be a kind of a vague term, but if you look at people as more than just a means to an end, but actually the reason why it's worth pursuing what you're getting into, that's kind of like a key mindset behind it.
Okay.
And then I first got involved in the Chamber of Commerce.
How did you hear about that?
So I did a program through it a couple years ago.
Okay.
And then it's so funny how everything kind of works together. Because actually, now that I think of it, have you heard of Toastmasters before?
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like a presentation group where you kind of learn like public speaking, right?
Right. So I'm just going to real quickly lay out like how all the events of my networking life developed.
Yeah.
Right. So I talked to someone in the Dutchess County Regional Chamber of Commerce Youth Leadership Program who came to present on public speaking. So I talked to him after that session when I was probably, 16, 15. And I just like grabbed his email quick, and then I lost his email
Right.
and we lost touch. But I just thought he was a cool guy, and his message, what he shared with us, was really helpful to me. So I wanted to stay in touch. Anyway, when I was in the process of working towards this business, I actually was looking to join the Toastmasters group because communication to me, public speaking, is something that I have wanted to learn. And so I was looking around and I saw this guy's name on the list of one of the Toastmasters sites. And so I visited one of the meetings.
The same guy.
The same guy
From
who
the
had
email.
presented.
Got
Yes, exactly. Okay. So I go to that meeting and I actually forgot about it until like 20 minutes into it. And I was like, maybe I shouldn't join. I'll just join anyway. Right. It was good that I did. And afterwards I like told him towards the end of the meeting, I just mentioned like where I met him, and he was like, oh yeah. And he got really excited that like we reconnected and that his message was so impactful to me back then. And so he had an event that night that he invited me to. And I actually met my first client for this business that wasn't even fully set up yet at that event. And that was like my first official networking event.
Okay.
Very uncomfortable, but I was looking for uncomfortable things at that point. And I still am.
Yeah.
And so then from there, that same guy invited me to a presentation he was doing for the Chamber of Commerce. And afterwards, I got an email from someone at the chamber about signing up, becoming a member of the chamber. And so I met with them, and that started my networking sort of thing, and it was working. Like the amount of business that would come in just by meeting people, talking to them, hearing about their business, caring about their business, and then it just started to really work. And so I visited a BNI meeting a little while back, and now I'm looking to get more established. But networking and like the Chamber of Commerce has definitely been the lifeblood of my own personal marketing. And I think some of it is because my product is very much business to business.
Right.
But yeah.
I think it's really interesting to me, because the reason I was like even bringing this up is because when my mom told me, she was like, I met this young guy. He's younger than you, but he was at this BNI meeting. And I was just thinking to myself, I was like, how did this happen? Because I feel like a lot of people, especially our age today, take more of like the social media approach to networking and online approach to networking. And I found it very interesting that this was something that you were involved in, more like in-person stuff. So like when she told me about that, I was kind of surprised, and I was like, yeah, I definitely want to talk to this guy and see why. Like why in-person networking, why BNI versus, connecting with people via LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It's kind of ironic, right? Because I run a video business, and I'm definitely working on, I think both sides of it are important, but I think it comes back to that emphasis on relationships. And I actually wanted to write an essay a little while ago because we're in this digital age now, and things are getting really efficient as far as like we can have meetings, we can have BNI meetings out of our homes now, basically. And we can just jump on a phone call with anyone. I mean, that's not new, but social media now becomes its own platform, almost like a like a networking organization in some ways.
Right.
But I wanted to write this essay called "Let's Remember Why."
Okay.
And the reason is that relationships are extremely inefficient.
Okay.
In this world where companies are constantly pursuing efficiency, right? The more personal and interaction, I think, like the more, just look at Zoom, right? Zoom versus in-person. In-person is so much less efficient.
Yeah.
But it's also more relational. Like there's dimensions in the personal that you don't get on Zoom. There's just a body language, a presence, and even like if we were talking over Zoom, this interaction would be very different. And it's even hard to state like in what way. But I don't think it's worth trading our efficiency or trading relationships for efficiency, because relationships are worth so much. I heard someone else say that the biggest enemy to good communication is time.
Yeah.
And
we've seen that for sure with like the advent of like, you know, social media platforms like Twitter or any short form content where you have, you know, this crazy phenomena where people are arguing on the internet because you have 200 characters or 300 characters to make a point when you really can't like lay out a nuanced point. And then you have people like kind of communicating in this very short form manner, and it doesn't work, you know?
Yeah. And like, what's more important, the idea that the person is communicating or the person themselves?
Right.
And I think that's kind of what happens is you lose those dimensions of personality. And so in person, for me, I guess it's something that it's good to have good mentors. I think that have really been successful and can offer good advice. And my main mentor doesn't even know very much all about social media, right? And he didn't push me to do networking necessarily either, but he always pushed me to go in person. He said, your first resort is in person. Your second resort is a phone call. I don't think he even really is too familiar with Zoom, to be honest.
Yeah.
Or Zoom, right? Your third resort is email, and your fourth resort is text.
Right.
And the reason for that is a text doesn't sell.
Yeah.
And it's not all about the sale. Like, I guess I should say it this way. A text doesn't build a relationship the same way that.
Well, I think both. So like you mentioned a couple times, like obviously you're not wrong in saying that building relationships is important and sometimes even more important than the money that comes after it.
Right.
I don't think you're wrong in saying that, but I think both are true at the same time. Whereas, you know, obviously if you're going to like a business networking meeting or something of that nature, like Chamber of Commerce, like everybody's kind of there for a reason. Right. But it doesn't mean that relationship and that interaction has to solely be for the purpose of just a transaction and just a sale. Like it can be both. You're meeting somebody, you're getting to know somebody, you're, you know, having a human interaction with that person. And then also at the same time, you're potentially gaining a customer or somebody who does purchase something from you in the long run.
And gaining a customer adds to that relational value. Like, is your product something that's going to actually like help and bless your customer? Because that's only going to strengthen the relationship.
Right.
And so I think if you go through business, just looking at it like, how can I build better relationships? I think that'll take you a really, really long way.
I agree. And I thought it's like, that's honestly, I think that's probably one of the most important things you've said so far in terms of like the in-person networking. And that's why I brought it up, because it is something that has gotten very lost, especially with like our generation and even the generation before us. Everybody wants to do everything quick and on social media, and they want to just be able to send a text and that's enough. And if I just like DM this guy once every couple of weeks, like, oh, hey, how's it going? Like, that's enough. And it's like, that's not always enough. And it's kind of created this very superficial feeling where you can kind of tell. And I think, most people are still able to recognize this when somebody is just reaching out and communicating with you through Instagram just for the sake of trying to flip a sale or something, right? Like I will still reach out to my customers and I have he was on the podcast, Joe Alfano, Tuned Out. I'll just send him, like, if I see something on Instagram, it's like I know he loves dogs or like the Yankees. So if I see like a giant dog on Instagram, like I'll just send him that. Like I'm not trying to get a sale out of him. I'm genuinely just like, oh, this is funny, thought of you, like, that's it, right? It doesn't always have to be so transactional, and I think that's a better approach.
But here's the thing too, is a lot of people who are into networking take a very transactional approach.
Right.
And so I think, and I've actually heard this before, you probably have too, and I will be honest, like, I am not good with social media.
Right.
Like, I'm good with video.
Yeah.
Right. I'm good at making the content, but social media is not my specialty. It's something that I'm working on, because I think that social media, and I've heard that social media is like a networking group. And if you treat it like it is, the algorithms are actually designed to generate progress for your business, basically.
Yeah.
So like you get people at networking events, and this is the problem with networking, that are there to pretend to like you so that they make a sale.
Yeah. And
I think that that's an approach you can take to social media too. But then if you take an approach, and this is actually where my vision for this company comes in, for my company, Lenscape Media, is that if you take the approach on social media or on your website, on the digital side of things, not just to like make transactions, but actually to show up with your personality, like as your social media platform, profile, videos, photos, they should all bring it right back to your personality. To bring that personality, and then to see how you can add value to others rather than just putting stuff out there to gain eyeballs.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. And I think part of the reason why in person is, I don't want to say it's a better option, because I think they're both equally important, as important as, I think you said that too. But I will say this. When you're in person, you can kind of see through that facade a lot easier. When somebody just approaches you and like, oh, hey, how's it going? By the way, I have this thing that you might be interested in. And then you're like, well, this seems very like fake,
Yeah.
And you can sense that out a lot easier in person. And that's why I would say, just going back to the original point, like for a lot of young entrepreneurs and just entrepreneurs in general, it's important to realize that while the internet is a fantastic tool and I love using it, like I'm not like super like online, but I do enjoy going on social media, communicating with people, sending people stuff. So I do enjoy that element of it too. But the in-person is also important, and it's something that I think a lot of people neglect, especially today. And it doesn't even need to be like a BNI or some sort of formal meeting either. I think like people forget too. I'm not saying like go out and meet somebody online and then like try to meet them in person, but like if you know somebody, right, and you've been communicating online, you can always schedule like a time, like, oh, hey, let's get lunch, or let's, if you guys have a common interest, let's go golf or something, and just have that opportunity.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just thought that was important, and like I said, I thought it was interesting, given your age, that you were still able to recognize the importance of like being present with people and being, physically there. It's what I mentioned to you too when we were setting this up. You were like, oh, are we going to do this through Zoom, or how are we going to do it? And I said, no, I'll come here, because it is better to sit in the same room with somebody and talk, because, you're on Zoom, you have, you're on one side of the screen, I'm on another side of the screen, I have something going off in the background over here, or like, there's a lag and then I miss what you said. And it's like,
it's just not the same. Like
It's not the same.
it's hard to even say like what aspects of the relationship are not present when that's the case. But there are definitely things missing.
Yeah.
And I guess another thing too, if you're younger and you're an entrepreneur, there's not a lot of younger entrepreneurs out there in, like, I think the youngest in most of these networking events and stuff that I go to, the youngest person I'll meet is like 30 or older. And so you can kind of stand out a little bit. And maybe it's not in a good way, I don't know. But it does make you more memorable, and it does help. I think it helps. And then being young no matter what.
Yeah.
Like looking like you're 14, I'm very young look to me.
Yeah.
It makes it challenging in some ways, but at the same time, a lot of people love to help, and
definitely. I think you're reading my mind there, because that was actually the next thing I had on the list here that I wanted to talk about, because, obviously we are both young entrepreneurs, younger people, and I've experienced my fair share of, obstacles and benefits from being younger. Mm-hmm. So what would you say specifically, like, what are those obstacles that you face walking into a room as the youngest person in the room, and then, maybe what are some of the benefits of that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely, as far as obstacles go, you have to really work to build your credibility. And I'm not like a master at this at all. This is just something that I know I have to do. And so, like, one of my business coach mentioned to me early on, like, one easy way to do this is when you set up meetings, set a specific time and show up.
Yeah.
Like, show up, look professional. Like, you got to kind of work the little things, I think. And then I think it's just working to build that. And the more experience, you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't start with a massive portfolio in regards to like video. Like, I built a portfolio now, but when I started, I didn't have that. And so I built a portfolio with my iPhone. But yeah, I think being young, like, people, I think likability is really like an important thing in a sale. Yeah. I'm not saying that I'm likable, right? But I think that people would rather support someone who's like up and coming sometimes. And so even some of the sales I've had, they're probably looking to help, which sounds like cheating, but really, like, that's kind of how it works. I think even once you have that full level of visible competence.
Yeah, you have like that element of like, well, let's give him a shot. Let's see how it goes. He's young, so maybe you don't really know. You haven't built your credibility yet, as you mentioned. And, maybe they're hesitant about that, but you are right. Some people will just be like, well, let's give him a shot. Obviously everybody. I think a lot of people do acknowledge that too. Like, everybody needs to start somewhere, and like you said at the beginning, people are more willing to help than you think. Like, there's a lot of people who are just happy to help, and when you can find those people, it makes for great relationships and great results for that too.
So another challenge though that just came to my mind, this is a big one, is people will, and they have they work the angles a little bit. They see you're young, and they try to take advantage in some ways, right? Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's hard to tell if they're really trying to take advantage. But I think that's definitely something to be aware of, because I know I've been in many sales situations where, like, everything's so new to me. So I just want the sale, right?
Yeah.
And thankfully I usually reach out to a mentor or something, and I'm like, listen, they told me, with video, they always say, I have a really extensive network, and all these people that I know are going to need videos as well. So you should give me a good price.
Right.
Someone suggested that if someone ever says that to me, just say, I can't remember what they said. Never mind them.
Well, no, that's fine. It is interesting that you said that though, because it is true. People will try to take advantage of the fact that you're young, and either with we'll do it for exposure, or you'll do it for, like, do it for this discounted rate, and then I'll pay you for the next ones or something. And it is difficult, right, when you are younger, because at the same time, like, they're not necessarily wrong. Like, you yourself haven't established like your own experience in terms of time, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that you need to or shouldn't have to work for free.
Right.
So it's about that. It's about that balance. And I think also like that's a very prevalent issue for like many artists and many art forms. Like I've talked to a lot of tattoo artists, and you'll always get, they tell you about the stories where they'll get the DM from like the guy with like 50,000 followers, which like relatively really isn't that much.
Mm-hmm.
But like he'll have 50,000 followers or whatever. He'll be like, oh, like you can tattoo me and I'll post it and like I'll tag you in it so you get the exposure. And it's like, exposure doesn't pay the bills. It's not going to help me buy more materials. It's not going to help me, go ahead and grow my business and get to a point where I am like comfortable and able to survive off of this. So
it's true. Yeah. That's the thing. Like, I'm not sure if it's always like this, but I know being young, at least, like I have an urge to just do it. I think it's an artist thing too.
Yeah.
Probably some of the challenge is creating is just fun, right?
Yeah.
And so you'd much rather create than not create. And when you're building a business, I think you just have to be careful with like your reputation, right? And if you are submitting to their belief that you aren't competent enough to make what you're asking for, then naturally you're going to lack that internal confidence that you can be what you're worth and you can be what you need to in order for the business to be successful. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I do think that like giving in to, I guess, uncomfortable conversations or giving into having to just not budge on your price or
it's okay. You don't always have to make the sale. That's another thing I think people should know. You don't always have to make the sale. There will be another sale. And I've said this to people like many times too, where, whether it's with the shirts with M3 merch or even, I told you, like I started doing some videography and like quickly kind of realized it wasn't something I was wanting to pursue for a business just because of like a bunch of different reasons. But like one of the things when I was doing that was I was editing like YouTube videos for people. And I remember specifically I was editing for this one person and I think I told them something like, I'll do it for, I don't know, I'm just kind of making this up. I was like, I'll do it for $30 a video. I'll edit your video. You send me all of the clips and I'll just edit it together or something, right? And then the next person, somebody that they knew hit me up and they were like, oh, can you do this for me? And I was like, yeah, it'll be 35 a video. And they're like, oh, well, so-and-so said you could do it for 30. And I was like, well, that was the deal that they got because of like the amount of work that they were giving me. It's not the same here. And you have to be able to put your foot down and like explain to people too, because at the end of the day, like as long as you're being reasonable with your pricing and what you're charging for the service, there's really no reason for anybody else to complain about that, right? Like I would understand if I was like, I want $500 a video and somebody would be like, well, that's way too much just to edit it on Adobe, like or whatever. And I would understand that, given my experience and like what I was offering at that time. I would understand that. But when you know, like you have to be confident that what you're charging is a reasonable price for your skill set, for your service. And as long as you're confident in that, when people want to try to persuade you otherwise, you have to, have that ability to just put your foot down and say no.
That's a challenge that I have though. Like I think one of the things that's most challenging for me is setting a price because it's kind of scary. You're just putting yourself out there, like you're putting a value on yourself or your business basically.
Yeah.
And so I think like you might not feel fully confident in it, but you just have to choose to be like you just have to kind of go for it and just say to yourself like, yeah, I'm worth it.
Yeah. No, well, you I mean, in many cases you are. I think like people, it's a little bit easier for me. And this was also part of the reason why I kind of stopped doing like the videography element of it, because like when you do have the artistic elements, you start getting into a more subjective like analysis of like what your work is worth, because now you're looking at the quality of it, which has like many factors in terms of like what's the quality of the video, what's the quality of the editing and sound and all of that, right? But it's a little bit easier for me because I can just go and I'm in a bunch of Facebook groups for people who do like garment decorating and screen printing and all of that. So I'll just go into these groups and I'll look on other competing websites and see like what are they going to charge for this, and then I'll just have my price, right? And oftentimes my price, and even at the value that I'm putting at, where I'm putting like a premium on my service, I'm still coming in lower than some of these other companies because I was able to cut overhead and do some things a little bit differently. So it is a little easier for me because I'm able to kind of point those things. If somebody comes to me and they're like, well, that's too much for a shirt, I'll go, well, look at Custom Ink. It's an extra $10 for this shirt if you want it. So
it's not that quick. Like there's so many. That's one of the things that's challenging about the industry. Definitely, there's so many variables.
Yeah.
So even when you meet someone at a networking event and they're like, "What do you charge?"
Yeah.
You have to give them the answer. It depends.
Yeah.
Which doesn't help much, but the thing is this too. Like you mentioned about the creative side. That's I think for me having this business, someone just explained to me early on, like I'm not just selling like an editing service. Like I'm actually selling myself and this company as an artist.
Sure.
Like we're not just taking like elements and putting them into something. We're not like making something exactly, how do I say this? Like we're working with your vision.
Right.
And then we're adding our own creative input to that to output something that both aligns with your vision and tells the story in a creative way.
You're creating something unique every time. It's not like what I do, it's literally a printer. Like it prints exactly what you want. Whatever you put into it, more or less, whatever you put into it is gonna print on the shirt that you want. Like that's just the way it is. There's different ways I can edit the colors and stuff and like maybe edit your design, but in the vast majority of the point is like what you're doing is a lot more unique in the sense that you could do a video, right? And then somebody else who also does videography could do a video and they'll come out totally different.
Right.
And it's the same thing. Like you're saying there, people, customers, clients, whomever need to realize that, in that you're paying not just for the video, you're paying for the vision that kind of leads and creates that video.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what makes it worth it, in my opinion. And one of the challenging things, and I'm sure you face this as well, is that, and your industry is probably similar, is that video production is very popular now. Like a lot of people want to do it. And I have my own dreams on how, like, I think that actually can help my business. But this creative side of things, and I think the specialization in like the business and nonprofit community really makes Lenscape Media stand out, right? It makes it different. And like I don't say no to little things. Like I've done some YouTube related editing and stuff like that, right? But the goal is to help businesses. And I think specializing in that way and then going out to networking events and stuff like we were talking about before, where these, like, I don't think a whole lot, I'm probably wrong about this, but I don't think Instagram is where a whole lot of my customers spend their time. Probably wrong about that, but I think also, like, I don't think Instagram, well, I want your response to this. I don't know if Instagram is where a lot of my potential customers do business.
Right. No, I don't think you're necessarily wrong on that. I mean, obviously, I don't know your customer base as well as you do, or the people that you're trying to attract, because at the end of the day, that's your own thoughts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think especially if you're going for like more of a business to business approach, like Instagram is not always the way. I think when I started doing the videography, I did do everything heavily on Instagram, and that was part of the issue too, because I was like, while I didn't like not enjoy it, but I was also like, the people who were seeing my videos and kind of reaching out to me for like more work were not necessarily people I wanted to work with, because they weren't interested in paying for a service. They were just like, a lot of these people were interested in getting a video and kind of basically doing anything but paying. So you do need to recognize that, and recognize you need to recognize, right? Like if you're looking to advertise to larger businesses or to more established businesses that are local businesses just in Dutchess County, wherever, Instagram might not be the best tool for you. What in a long-term sense, it might be in terms of, branching out and growing and scaling your business. Right. But I think you're not wrong. When you start something and you start in a niche, your customer base is somewhat limited. I've had people tell me the same thing. I'm going to laugh at this. He listens to the podcast sometimes. I had one of my friends tell me that I sell sand at the beach because of, I create shirts and there's a ton of people who also make shirts, but it's not the same thing. And this is, obviously he was partially joking in that.
That's a good saying.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And, I told him otherwise, and I still think this way because it's not the same, right? When somebody comes to me to make a shirt, especially locally, you're not coming yes, there's a million other companies that create custom garments you can order anywhere, but you're not getting the same experience that you're getting with me. And you're also not getting the same level of customer service. You're not getting the same quality product and the time and the effort. And you're also not getting the same assurance that what you're getting is going to be what you want. If somebody comes to me and they're genuinely, and they have a reasonable request where they're like, this shirt doesn't look the way that I wanted it to, I will go out of my way and fix it for them because that's part of good customer service. And I have a niche. I had a niche to start. I'm starting to expand, but originally my niche was tattoo artists because that was where I was positioned to work. Those are the people I was positioned to work with due to my prior work experience. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't selling sand at the beach. I was selling a specific product to a specific group of people, right? And now that it's time to kind of expand my services to other people, I have the opportunity. I have that foundational base of customers, and I think I will start to I have been using Instagram. So yeah, just kind of to what you were talking about, Instagram is a great tool for when you want to expand, but not necessarily. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt. At the end of the day, a lot of, I don't want to say it's free to post because you do have to take time and curate content for it and all of that. And your time is worth money. But it's probably one of the most cost-effective ways to market at this time. Mm-hmm. Just because of the reach that you can get for the dollars that you're putting in. If you do want to do Instagram ads or Facebook ads, the value there is a lot higher than most other marketing tactics.
I'm getting into LinkedIn a little bit more because I think that's where a lot of the business type.
Yeah, again, if you it's heavily dependent on your customer base. So again, if you're looking for businesses, you're not totally wrong in LinkedIn or more local media in terms of if there's a popular I know they have the Dutchess County newspaper or something there's more local ways to advertise where you could take that approach. And it doesn't hurt to try different things too. You don't really know where you're going to find business. So you can put a little bit of time into Instagram, you put some time into local media. You could even, go door to door and knock on businesses' doors and be like, hey, I'm offering these, I have this XYZ, whatever your pitch is, right? Right. And that's fine too.
Different ways.
But yeah, there's a ton of different ways you can do it. And I guess.
Oh, can I add one thing to what you said just a minute ago?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just something a mentor told me once that is very memorable and I think very interesting and very true is that you aren't selling a product, you're selling an experience.
Yeah.
And I think that goes to your point, selling sand on the beach, right? If you can sell sand on the beach, then it must not be the sand.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I think your products, I'm sure, are unique in many ways, and my product is unique in many ways. But it's that process, and it's not even the sales tactics, right? I think it's that relationship, and you're saying, customer service, communication, and all that other stuff. Just one of my mentors, I've said the word mentor 1,000 times today, but I think it's good. One of my mentors is all about fun.
Okay.
Actually, both of them. I have more than two, but two of my primary ones are all about fun. Okay. Fun sells.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an experience.
If you can make something enjoyable, it's going to be that much easier to get people to partake in it, right? Whether it's buying something or just being a part of something. Yeah, I think that's important. There's like a lot more that I wanted to talk about, but honestly, like we've probably talked long enough for this episode, I would say. Let's just end on this. In your current situation, like where you stand right now, if you had to give one piece of advice to young entrepreneurs like yourself or younger entrepreneurs in general, like even younger than you, what would your one piece of advice be?
Can I have two?
Go ahead.
Can I get two?
Yeah. We can make an exception.
You can make an exception.
Yeah.
All right. My two pieces of advice would be: first, focus on relationships and value them as the goal. That would be the one piece. Okay. The second piece of advice would be just go for it.
Yeah. That ties in perfectly to what we were talking about right at the beginning. You gotta take action, and you have to, you can only plan for so long. There's people who will, they'll die planning out what they were gonna do and they never did it. So if you have something you're thinking about and you have the means to go do it, you have to go do it. Because planning will only take you so far. That's definitely true. And speaking of plans, this is the last question that I ask everybody on the podcast. What is your vision for your business in 10 years? Let's say everything goes to plan. You're exactly where you want to be. What does Lenscape Media look like in 10 years? What is Rocky Santo doing in 10 years?
So you might laugh, but Lenscape Media would be a national franchise with, I don't know the full number, definitely well over 100 different locations in the serving different communities.
Okay.
Because it's specifically like community oriented. So like there'd be a Hudson Valley Lenscape Media base, for example, and then there'd be just as like a random location, like Denver, Colorado or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And I would just love, that's the goal. Like right now, and I know visions change, right?
Yeah.
But I want to go big. Why not?
No, go big. Like if that's the point of this question, like I want people to just like say like what their ideal thing would be in 10 years. Because at the end of the day, like my vision for this podcast is that in 10 years, I would be able to kind of reach out to all of these people that I originally talked to, right? And see what happened, right? And it's not to say that everything is going to happen, but it is to say that like we're documenting this now and we'll be able to have that contrast, like compare and contrast later on, whether you reached your goal or you changed goals, like you can't predict what exactly is going to happen in the future. But the whole point is to like, what's that big, like pie in the sky goal? Because that's, it's important to have very achievable small goals, but also having that one like big thing that you love to work towards is, I think,
it's just exciting.
It's exciting. Yeah. It's part of that drive and that motivation that you were talking about.
So like picture Chick-fil-A.
Yeah. But
video production.
All right.
That's what I kind of aspire to bring this to.
Awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation, and
thank you so
I think
much.
I think we've talked about a lot. Before we go, did you want to just plug your social medias that you might start using a little bit more?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm on them. I would say my website is the best place to go, although I'm currently redoing it. I don't know when this will release. It should be done by then. Okay. That's lenscapemedia.com, LENSCAPE media.com. And I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn under the same name, Lenscape Media. Okay. That'll start being more and more active. But yeah, anywhere there you can find me. You can also find me at Rocky Santo.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I can't wait to see what happens, and hopefully we'll have you back. I'm sure we'll have you back before the 10-year mark, but hopefully we can do this again. I have a ton more questions, and I'm excited. Thank you so much,
Jake.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Bye, everybody.